record. All right. Well, Kevin, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Cheryl, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today.
You have an absolutely fascinating background. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your professional career.
Sure. Well, I consider myself a recovering academic elitist. And I started, I said that half jokingly, half serious. I started out the traditional university for all path. Went to private Jesuit liberal arts residential universities. I got 2 bachelor's, 2 master's degrees, and I found myself underemployed. So I was working in the filing room for a now bankrupt and closed mortgage company, and I had a pile of student loan debt. It was a friend that then actually referred me to a local company, and I got an industry credential. It took me 1 week, 40 hours, on top of what over a decade of post-secondary education at that point, and it was that industry credential coupled with the formal education that lifted me out of working poverty. And I kind of learned of this whole world of industry credentialing and workforce development and CTE. And then I actually got a job through the state of California with the California Community College System. And that was, oh gosh, 17 years ago plus change. And so I've been in this field of career and technical education since, but it's by accident. Like, I don't know, sure. I don't think any child ever says, when I grow up, I want to be a community college administrator in economic development. Like it's normally not right after firefighter and teacher or something. So by happenstance, I kind of fell into this, and I love it. And I've developed a passion for it. And so I've been a regional labor market analyst in California. We call them Center of Excellence directors. I've been a CTE faculty member. I've been a dean of instruction over current technical education at the community college level. And for the last 4 years, I've been a vice president. And I love this field and really focusing on systemic and regional solutions for helping students find their purpose on purpose. So that's kind of a little bit of, that's like 2 decades in less than 3 minutes.
Well, I love it. I love that term, working poverty, too, because I think people have been devaluing higher education in our country. You see statistics and polls that show a decline in the belief that higher education can actually lead you to a sustainable career in life. But I think most of those polls center around, the type of degree you had, a liberal arts degree or a degree where there's not a lot of career pathways. And
Yeah.
so students have ended up leaving these liberal arts professions and then being in working poverty with student loan debt, and not having a true career pathway. So you experienced that firsthand and then were able to fix it, right?
Yeah, and I'm not pro or anti liberal arts. I'm not pro or anti vocational school. I'm not pro or anti, advanced placement. I'm pro student.
Right.
And I'm anti mountains of debt. So, I mean, for me, it's just what's right for that person, what's right for her, what's right for him, and it might be a degree in French literature, it might be plumbing, and one is not, should not be considered more laudable than the other. And I think we just have this, dare I say, like we have a love affair with the bachelor's degree in this country, and there's nothing wrong with that. And for many paths, it requires that. I think we conflate sometimes too being well educated and being a critical thinker with also being prepared for a career, and the two are not always the same thing. So yeah, I experienced that, that one way to win kind of mentality, and then found myself arguably overeducated, uh, in debt for sure, and underemployed, not unemployed, but underemployed. And I don't know that we really talk about that. So there's a percentage of the population that goes through that, and I think we can do better.
Yeah. And there's so many people out there who, like you said, nobody dreams of being a college administrator, but they don't even know what type of careers are available that are really exciting and high paying and don't require you to go to college for 4, 6, or 8 years.
That's right. So shameless book plug. So that's why I wrote my children's book, to start that conversation early there. So the Department of Labor, here's your fun fact for the day, Cheryl, for you and your listeners. So the Department of Labor says there's over 950 jobs that exist. I can't imagine a high schooler being able to name more than 100 of them. They know what they know from school, from work, from TV, and from their immediate family. That's it. So there's so many they don't need, or so many they don't know about, and they need more exposure to those. Like as a college administrator, I see a lot of students that want to go into healthcare, so they go into nursing. And I'll sometimes ask them, "Oh, well, what was it about being a radiological technician that you didn't like?" And I'll get the big eyes because they have no idea what I'm talking about, or they never heard what a sonographer was, right? So yeah, there's definitely a role there for more intentional career exploration.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about this book. What is it called?
Yeah, so inspired by my almost 6-year-old. It's called There's a Hat for That. And it's a children's book that just walks through different careers. There's 16 industry clusters in America. So there's 16 hats that a little monkey wears and kind of explores the different careers someone could have. And it really just focuses on the fundamental truth that we'll all wear different hats throughout our life, and we won't have just one job or one career, especially in the world of tomorrow, where there's so much more churn. And there's a letter in the back for parents and guardians to kind of help them, to encourage them and help them focus on career exploration for their child. But I just saw a gap from all the books I was reading my daughter, and so I wrote something that was more about career exploration and CTE, and just helping students, to encourage them to explore that.
That's wonderful. So if anyone wants to find that book, I think what they can find it on Amazon probably.
They could. There's a hat for that.com.
Perfect.
Thanks for the shameless plug. Yeah.
Well, speaking of random facts, I did a presentation and you and I were able to see each other a couple weeks ago. And I played a game, a guessing game, which the audience always loves. And one of the questions was, how many American high school seniors report that their guidance counselor never talked to them about a community college or a trade school?
Who can I guess?
Answer was 56%. So
56.
more than half of American high schoolers have never been talked to about options at a trade school or community college. They've only been guided in this 4-year
Yeah.
pathway. And so there's so much opportunity to get that message out to people early in their academic experience that there are other options for you and exciting careers that you can pursue. And so,
Absolutely. And it's not about what you're going to do forever. It's just what
yes,
you want to do next.
yeah,
Right. And that's what's great about this is people can reinvent themselves. They can decide in their late 20s that what they thought they wanted to do when they're 18, they're a different person and they want to, pivot and go a different direction. And so that's what I love about our higher education system in America. There's open entry, open access. There's so many opportunities. You're never in one track, right? So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm not surprised by that statistic. Actually, I would have guessed higher. I think a lot of folks are, oh, university for all, but it should be university for many. But there is no one size fits all. We're three-dimensional human beings, and we're all works in progress.
yeah. And in fact, the statistic was higher because I did the same question 3 years ago and it was about 66%. So I was like, maybe we're starting to make a difference. All
I,
this talking about community college and careers, maybe it's starting to sink in a little bit.
I think so. I think the last couple of administrations, and I think with all of the grant money and talk around the career academies and career readiness, I think a lot of school districts across the nation are changing that terminology. It used to be everyone just got an academic plan. Now they're getting an academic and career plan. So I think it is evolving. But that'll be interesting to track maybe 10 years from now to see if it's in the 40s. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and keep advancing that.
Well, now we have that, like here in the podcast, we have, so I could come back in 10 years and be
That's
like, what
right.
was that number?
We don't
Hasn't
have to
that
wait
been?
10 years to have me back, but yeah, it's hopefully the trend continues because
Yes.
the world needs poets, but we also need great entrepreneurs, and so it's really just finding what's the right fit for that person. Yeah.
Now you have founded your own company, kind of to take this message on the road and to really help colleges grow the way they talk about and really administer their career education programs. So tell me a little bit about Catapult and what it is and what colleges can get out of it.
Absolutely, and I think it'll resonate with you as a former community college administrator yourself. I used to think, Cheryl, that you can't change the system unless you're in the system. And what I think I've learned over my 10 years, it's actually the opposite. I think it's very difficult to change a system when you're in the system because you're tied to collective bargaining agreements and politics and org chart structures. And so you can't always advance change to the extent that you want. And sometimes an outside consultant or some really intentional professional development can do more than one internal champion or cheerleader trying to advance a cause. So birthed out of frustration, actually, a few years ago, we founded Catapult, and it is a virtual masterclass for an entire institution. So whether it's a high school district, a community college, it takes every employee from the elected officials all the way to the cafeteria and custodial teams and gives them all a shared experience. And so we have 3 different masterclass options, and there's a couple layers to it, probably 3 layers. The first layer is every employee gets a virtual keynote from what I would humbly say are the best keynote speakers in the country on a given topic. And I'm elated that you'll be joining the Catapult family in the spring with our CT recruitment and marketing masterclass as one of our speakers. And so we broadcast 5 keynote speakers, and these are individuals that are at international conferences and TED speakers. They're going to be broadcasted to every employee. And then there's the second layer is an implementation team coaching call. And here's the analogy I like to use. We all know how to lose weight. We know we need to eat right, and we know we need to exercise. That's not a secret, but it's hard. And we know that if we get a coach, a physical trainer, an accountability partner, a nutritionist, whatever it may be, we know that that accountability and individual tailored support helps us to be more successful. So in this masterclass, the keynote is followed up by a local tailored implementation team coaching call that is really about that institution's next steps and really the right next steps to advance forward, depending on where they are. And then there's also, thirdly, an interactive playbook that every employee gets. So we actually learn. I mean, think about all of the webinars and conferences we've been to, and it's just, we sing Kumbaya, and then we go back to our desks and do everything the same way we did before, or it's so hard to translate that motivation and information we got at a conference to everyone else at our institution that didn't go. So then the third piece is actually using learning science to spend intentional time on reflection, on practice, and implementation. So those are the 3 levels to it. So there's keynotes, coaching calls, and actual learning and through a playbook that the whole institution has. So the results, I've been super excited, are amazing. It's actually changing the dialogue when a whole institution wants to advance, either with the way they market and fill their classes, or the other master classes we have is one is on work-based learning, and a third is on career readiness. And so we're really seeing that dialogue is advancing institutions forward, and it gets a lot of other folks. Like, I imagine, knowing your audience, we're a little preaching to the choir here, but it gets, think about all the other people that aren't listening to this that we wish heard, what we talked about, or we're at our regional convenings, we're at our conferences that focus on career readiness and CTE. This brings the best of the conference to them. And so we're really excited of the results that we're seeing.
Oh, that's excellent. I think you've hit the nail on the head, because you do go to a conference where you see a great speaker, you're completely inspired, you have ideas you want to bring back, maybe you've written them down, or I used to email my president during conferences. I would email him ideas, and then once he wrote me back, "This is why I don't approve your travel requests."
Too many ideas, Cheryl.
Yes, too many ideas. Then you get back in the office, and you're back to work, and you didn't have a shared experience with others on campus that maybe had that same aha moment. So I love this idea of bringing an entire campus together to learn together, because things like marketing and even instruction aren't just one person's job on a campus. They belong to everybody.
That's right. Enrollment management is not 2 or 3 people's job, and it's everyone from who answers the phones to who's pushing the button on the social media, to the student that's given the tour, when potential students come to visit. And if they don't understand the philosophy of recruiting and marketing, and really understanding what market segmentation is, and even just some of the basics, it's really difficult to get everyone galvanized together. And so I'm really excited about this spring session and having you part of the CT recruitment and marketing masterclass. And we do cap it, so if people are interested, maybe we can include the URL or something with the podcast notes, and I'd love to chat with anyone further if they'd like to hop on board in the spring.
Yeah, and besides the marketing track, I mean, you have some amazing speakers in your other track. I mean, you have what's his name, the
Mike
famous
Rowe.
guy, Mike
Yeah,
Rowe.
Mike Rowe is, so we're
Yeah.
working with the Mike Rowe Foundation for the Work-Based Learning Masterclass. And we have others like Heather McGowan in the career readiness, and she's the author of the book, The Adaptation Advantage. She does over 200 keynote speeches internationally a year. And some of these are, I've done this for years where I had to find a good speaker, bring them to the campus, and it's a lot of work, and it's expensive. And so what we've done is by batching and kind of pooling our money together, we get that Mike Rowe caliber speaker that would never come to an individual school district. And now we're able to bring them to the entire institution at a price point that we can actually afford. So I think it's really a unique model. People say, oh, it's a virtual conference. Like, no, it's not. It's not a seminar. It's not a conference. It's kind of this new model of how we redefine professional development. So yeah, we have 15 speakers across 3 master classes currently and growing. There's a 4th master class we're looking to launch next fall, focused on faculty and instructional excellence, actually. So there's a preview. No one else knows that yet. That's the first time, Cheryl, I said that out loud. So
Wow,
that'll be
unveiled
coming next year.
on our podcast.
That's right. An exclusive behind the curtain peek. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, if people are interested in learning more about how they can be involved, where do they find out more information?
catapultlpd.com. And there's a
Great.
lot of information on there. And I do a VIP briefing twice a week, and people can hop on and I can answer their questions and see if it's a good fit for them. And even if this is not like maybe the right time for them, what I would just say to your listeners is we need to be more intentional with the professional development that we engage in.
Yeah,
Just sending a few people to a conference or watching a webinar is insufficient now. And it's just not going to move culture. It might be good for getting information. It might be good for just learning how to do conditional formatting in Excel. Like, that's what a video or webinar is great for. But when you really start talking about how do we advance our systems and how do we improve enrollments and how do we elevate the experience that our students have coming to us, we need to kind of rethink how we address that. So I would just encourage everyone to be a little more discerning about the time and energy we spend in professional development, because I think we could do a lot better than maybe what we've been doing.
for sure. Most of the listeners to this podcast are marketing and communication professionals at community colleges. So the marketing strand that you offer through Catapult would be of great interest to them. And I think they'll particularly love that the entire campus is invited to come and watch, because people really don't understand what goes into marketing and how complex and time consuming it can be. And in fact, I was just on a call yesterday with a consortium that's looking to do some career education marketing, and they wanted to know budget, and they had never, none of them were marketers, so they had never considered the fact that they actually have to pay for ads. Like, that was like, what's your budget for paid ads? And they're like, well, what do you mean? And
Wow.
I said, well, if you want people to see your ads, you actually have to pay for that. Like, it's not free. It's not free. But if you don't do it, if you're just a consumer, you're just consuming things, you don't understand the complexities of it.
Well, and that speaks to, there's probably a handful of folks at every college. There might be some marketing or business faculty. There'll definitely be like the public information officer, or there's a handful of folks, I would say less than 2%, that have any like formal training in marketing. So, wow, that's illustrative. Like, our colleagues need kind of that baseline
Yeah.
understanding. And even if you don't get everyone at the institution, but to get enough folks to have that tipping point that understand, oh, marketing is more than just a pretty picture on Canva that you put out on your Facebook page. But if no one's following it, and if you're not tracking it, and if it's not intentionally segmented, it doesn't really have the results people need. So yeah, I love that. That's a great point.
I know. I love the conversations too, because I feel like, oh, I get to educate people while, helping them fulfill their goals, but helping them educate. And I love what you've done with the intentionality around career education, because for many years, I don't think that was a topic that we as community college marketers were encouraged to explore. And I remember, in fact, there were philosophies going around like, we don't market programs, we market the college. We don't have time or energy to talk about biotechnology, or
Mm.
we don't have resources to go out and sell the horticulture program. And I remember even telling that to faculty 10 years ago, like, I can't market your program, sorry. And now we're seeing this whole shift in
Yeah.
marketing, where it's not enough to just say, hey, we're cheap and we're local. We have to start talking about programs and outcomes and salaries.
Absolutely. I think we've seen, and that's just in 10 years, yeah, as you
Yeah.
described. And I think we've seen over the last 10 years or so, students want to be part of smaller communities, and they don't enroll in a college. They enroll in a program or an experience. They have a goal, or at least an idea of the destination of where they want to head. And we know our retention rates. I mean, our retention rates are horrible in post-secondary. And I think and that's a very broad statement, obviously. But I think it's because we have historically not been very intentional of creating those pockets of community for students. And by marketing a program, by marketing a specific track, by marketing a specific experience, that's what attracts students. They want to be part of Puente. They want to be part of the agricultural pathway. They want to be part of that pre-med experience. And so, yeah, I think we've evolved in getting more. I blame Amazon. Sure, I think that they convinced us that everything can be tailored and custom, and you get your curated book recommendations for you. And I think the rest of us are like, oh, we need to do that in education too. So I think that CRM, or that kind of real custom communication package is new to our field, new in the last 10 years. But that's what our students want, and they need that. And frankly, when we do it, we see them enroll at a higher number, and they persist and actually complete to a higher ratio. So we know it works.
Yeah, in fact, we worked with a college in Northern California that had started a mechatronics program. And they were so excited about the program, and it's located in an area of California that has a huge industry need. And your starting salary is like 70,000
Wow.
right out the gate, and nobody enrolled in the classes. Well, because the students have no idea what mechatronics means, and it's very intimidating. Like the coursework looks very intimidating. So it was one of those colleges that thought, oh, if we offer it, they'll come. They'll
If
just
you build
come.
it, they will
Yeah,
come.
they'll just come.
You,
They'll show up.
that brings up an interesting nuance, that our terminology is not everyone else's terminology. And we had a mechatronics program. We renamed it, and then we
Oh.
renamed it again. And I half joking a couple of years ago, I said, we should rename this program "Play with Robotics and Make a Lot of
Yes.
Money," because that's what that resonates. That's what it is. It's
That's what it is.
robotics at
Yeah.
its core, right?
It's so interesting to say that, because so we did a meeting with the marketing team, with the faculty, and then with industry who are hiring. So we did a workshop, a marketing workshop, just to learn as marketers, like, what is mechatronic? We don't even know what it is. How are we going to sell this if we don't know what it is? And that was what our marketing ended up centering around. If you like building robots, working with your hands, working on cars, industry was like, hey, some of our best people we hire were mechanics, because they love getting in and fixing and building.
Yeah.
And then we learned that veterans are perfect candidates for being mechatronics, because that's the type of the education they got in the military. So yeah, we put together a campaign centered around, like, if you like this, then this field's for you. And their enrollment tripled in one semester, and it was just changing how you talked about the program.
See, I love it. That's speaking to the relevancy of the words that we use. Words have power. And
Yeah.
when we stand in front of someone and say, do you like to play with cars, or have you ever built a bicycle, or tried to build a computer? Like, those are tangible experiences some residents might have had exposure to, that is very transferable, and it speaks to maybe the likelihood that they're going to resonate with that program, instead of just saying, yeah, come take our Megatronics AS degree program, and that doesn't
Yeah.
mean anything.
Yeah.
Wow, great
Yeah.
illustration.
I looked at the curriculum and I was like, if I was a student, I wouldn't, engineering and pre-calculus, like, no, thank you. But then when you dig into, like, oh, what you're actually doing, like, this is really cool. Like, this is really exciting. So
I've
anyway.
been doing some work with a colleague in Australia, and they're a little ahead of us in terms of the terminology of how they market their programs. And I think we're finally shifting from, like we talked about, from promoting just the college to promoting programs. I
Right.
think we're starting to evolve also to promote, here's the destination. And if you want to get into this field, then here's some pathways. We talk a lot about guided pathways and end in mind, and that career focused. Well, in Australia, they're a step ahead, I think, of us. And they're actually now focusing on, if these are the problems in the world you want to solve, then here are the jobs you can get into, and here's the pathways in order to get there. And they're taking it like one step further to really have that relevance. And I've been playing with that a little bit myself. Like, what would that look like in a community college campaign, to not even really focus on the programs or the occupation, but the larger impact or the problems that it solves in the world, and then guiding students to that, because that North Star might be immovable even if the occupations and industries churn. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of different layers to that in that messaging.
Yeah, that is really relevant, especially to fields like biotechnology, where you're helping develop solutions, whether that be like drugs or, things to combat hunger. Like there's so many amazing outcomes of the work, and that draws people to that field, right? Even more than salary in a lot of cases. It's like, yeah, you're help solve major problems.
Absolutely. I just was reading something this weekend. I think it was a LinkedIn article where, it's not about salary anymore. And we're seeing that with whatever you want to call, what's happening now, the great resignation, the great reshuffle, the great resign. Like people are saying, you know what, I'll take a 30% cut, for in salary to do what I love, and to have maybe some flexibility in time or space, or to feel that I'm empowered, or to feel like I'm making a contribution in the world. And with people living longer, than they used to, just from a lifespan perspective, people that are quote unquote retiring are not going to Florida to play shuffleboard. Like they're starting a new company. They're still working on a social justice problem, or starting that, their new entrepreneurial pursuit. So yeah, I love that approach of really helping them identify, like, hey, here's kind of the larger mission, regardless of money, but here's where you can fit in and make a difference. I think that impact is speaking to residents now more than it did before. So from a marketing perspective, okay, what does that mean in terms of our posts and our terminology, and how do we tap into that with a little bit more intentionality?
Yeah, exactly. Tapping into people's purpose, their sense of purpose, because at the end of the day, we all want to make a difference. We want to have a purpose. And if you can capture that in your marketing, in your words, then you can really make an impact on people's lives. And that's what I mean, that's my purpose in marketing is I want to impact people's lives. So,
That's right. In our field, we don't sell a widget. We don't take
yeah,
stock options. Like
right.
we're selling opportunity. We're selling, a change in trajectory. I put out something recently for my college, and it said, whether you want to, start, or if you want to reinvent yourself, like if you want to pursue and level up, or if you want to completely abandon what you've done and reinvent who you are, like here are some options. And I think people are looking for that. Like you said, we want to transform lives. We want to change the trajectory of their lives. And that's what we're selling. We are selling. We shouldn't be afraid to say that. We are promoting and marketing and recruiting and selling. That's not a dirty, evil thing. It's just we sell something that's very affordable, that can have life-changing impact. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we still have to connect it to their why and their purpose, for sure.
Right. Market selling does cost money, people. Marketing
so,
does
so do
cost
paid
money.
social media ads. Yes, you have to have a budget for
You
that.
do have to
Absolutely.
spend money on it.
Absolutely.
Well, I am really excited to be one of your speakers this spring. I'm really looking forward to it, and I encourage the listeners to check out your website to see if their institution is interested in signing up, and also to look at your children's book. And you had a brand new book that came out, because when I saw you speak a couple of weeks ago, I picked it up on the table, and I'm reading it right now. So tell me a little bit about this new book.
Yeah, thank you. So this is, actually, I made a comment to before, like a lot of what we do in marketing is about words. It's about language. So I'm actually, the copy you saw shows pre-publication. It's actually going to be launched this next, in a week or two, but by the time your listeners hear this, it'll be launched.
Right.
It's called Words Are Your Superpower. And it's really a motivational illustrated book for adults, that really talk about the power we have within us, with the power of language, and how to harness it intentionally and for good, and to be aware of the power of our words, be that in casual or professional or personal settings. And so this was just something that was in me. It started, again, inspired by my daughter. Her words are so impactful, and they can really change the tone of the day and the family, by if we have a good attitude or not. And so it was actually just something I've been working on a few years. So it's a passion project. And I envision it as being the kind of book people can gift to someone that's graduating from college or graduating from high school. And it's a kind of a gift to encourage and motivate and empower and inspire those that are either timid to use their words, or maybe feel like they're the silent minority or maybe even the silent majority, but really empower them to use their voice and make a difference in the world for good.
Well, I don't want to give away too much of the book, but the one part that impacted me that I liked was the power of silence.
Hmm.
And I thought that was such a great point. Um, was there is power in our words, but there's also power when we choose to remain silent.
I'll share with you, Cheryl, when I was seeking an illustrator for this book, I had a number of folks that I was talking with and looking at, and one of the women wrote to me and said exactly what you said. She says that the section of the book that talks about silence, she said, resonated with her so deeply. Her father recently had a stroke and couldn't speak for a while. And so she started to well up. She shared with me and cried when she read the initial copy because she was experiencing in her own family the power and the impact that silence can make for good or sometimes, for not. And so I said, I found my illustrator, like done, like it connected so deeply with her. And Olivia, she did such a great job with the book. But yeah, our words, our silence, the spaces and the gaps and the tonality, all of that is so impactful. And as I'm speaking to, you have an audience of communicators, I'm sure they can all appreciate that, that every word that we use or don't use is it matters and is important.
Every word matters. Well, I think my listeners have a lot to learn from you, whether that be through your books or through participating in Catapult. So I'm really excited to make the connection with you and them, and I hope that they visit your website and learn more about what you have to offer.
Cheryl, thank you, and thank Graduate Communications. I'm elated you're joining the Catapult family, and everyone that participates is in for a treat with you and with the coaching calls next spring. And I just want to encourage your listeners, keep learning, keep growing, keep on doing the work. What we do has never been more important for the field to alter those trajectories and to really impact people's lives. So thank everyone. I want to thank everyone listening for doing what you're doing and for taking the time to listen to podcasts like this and to partner with Cheryl and her team and really make the world a better place through what we speak and type and shoot and deploy and send. So thank everybody out there for what you're doing.